Welcome to the Growing Gorillas podcast. I'm Kisa Davison.
And I'm Travis Davison.
And this podcast is all about parenting. The ups, the downs.
The in-betweens.
We have absolutely no idea what we're doing.
But likely neither do you.
So kick back, relax, and enjoy.
Special thank you to the Cleared Hot podcast for use of the studio and Andy Stump for all of his invaluable information.
If you'd like to learn more about Cleared Hot, visit clearedhotpodcast.com.
Let's do this.
Drink Element. LMNT is our podcast sponsor today. It's a healthy alternative to sugary electrolyte drinks. Every grab-and-go stick pack replaces all the essential electrolytes that you need with no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, or any other junk. I drink Element every day, and so does Travis, to support...
Because it's delicious.
Well, I was going to say, I drink it to support my hydration. I would say my low-carb diet, my fast, my workouts, etc., but none of those things are true. I just drink it because it's good, and I need water in the morning. My favorite flavor is definitely the orange one, and the green one, and the pink one.
Yes, you're saying raspberry, orange, and lime.
Correct.
Which I don't disagree with you on. However, the watermelon is delicious.
And let's not forget, the chili lime is good with tequila, as is the habanero mango, I think. The two spicy ones are really good with tequila. Not recommended in the morning, but still good with tequila.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of like, I guess, counterbalances.
Totally. It's a math equation. It works out somehow.
I don't think Robb Wolf necessarily is going to stand behind that.
I know, but he's not here, so...
That's true.
I'm the official on the subject. But listen, here's the cool part. As a member of our Growing Gorillas community, LMNT has a very, very, very cool offer for you. You can let them know that you are interested in trying out a sample pack. All you have to do is cover the cost of shipping so you can get yours.
Which is what, like $5?
I don't know.
I think it's like $5. Anyways.
I just charge things on my credit card. I don't look at it.
Cheap.
So here's the URL. drinklmnt.com/growing-gorillas. Now remember, growing gorillas, you have to spell all the way out, and there's 2 G's right in the middle, so don't screw it up. drinklmnt.com/growing-gorillas.
And in the words of Stella Davison, hydrate or dihydrate.
I feel like Element should adopt that as their new
Well,
tagline.
they just did.
Okay. Hey. This week's episode, we have a really fun conversation with Nicki Violetti and Robb Wolf. Nicki is the co-founder of the 4th CrossFit affiliate gym in the whole world, NorCal Strength and Conditioning. She's also co-founder of the tech scheduling company Front Desk, which I think is now Pike 13. And here's my favorite part. She's the 17th place CrossFit Games finisher. Holy moly.
Yeah, no thanks.
No, thank you. Mom to 2 girls, and of course, the 4-legged, 1 Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Also an SBG Blue Belt.
She is an SBG Blue Belt, which is no small feat. Nicki's also the co-host of the top-ranked podcast, The Healthy Rebellion Radio.
Which is a great podcast, by the way.
It is, and I love their early episodes when they were recording actually early in the morning. Those are my favorite ones because...
I've heard stories about the Ridgeback, by the way.
Oh, you have?
On the podcast, yeah.
I don't think I've heard those. So Robb, you might all be familiar with him. He's a former research biochemist. He's also the dad to 2 girls, but come on now. He's got 2-time New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling books. He's a co-founder of the 1st and 4th CrossFit affiliate gyms in the world, and he's got an SBG brown belt.
Yep. And we're fortunate enough to have them here in the Flathead Valley now.
I know. I kind of don't even want to tell people about all the cool people moving to the Flathead Valley.
Well, I heard that they put a moratorium on.
That's right. The city gates went up.
Yep.
And they locked them.
So there's no more room right now, unfortunately. But unfortunately, Robb and Nicki made it right before they closed it.
That's good. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I just met Sagan and Zoe. And as I was coming up the stairs, I heard them arguing about, am I not close enough? I heard them arguing about something, and I was like, oh, Nicki and Robb must be here. Those are their girls, clearly. Because I knew kind of the age range, but I'd never met them before. So I stopped and I looked at them, and they looked at me, kind of like narrowed their stare.
Did you smell like the ketones in their sweat? Was that the giveaway, or was it the element just pouring through their skin?
No, because they look like you. First of all, Nicki.
Fortunately.
Yes, fortunately.
Yes, very fortunately.
But then I said, "Are Nicki and Robb your parents?" And then they narrowed their glance a little bit deeper, and I said, "I'm their friend. And I introduced myself as Coach Kisa, which is funny. It's just an automatic with kids.
That's
But that's good because we told them that because they've met Coach Travis before, and we said, tonight you're going to meet Coach Kisa.
Oh, perfect.
So, yeah.
Perfect.
Well, you just got done coaching, so it's not odd that you'd be like, hey, I'm Coach Kisa.
Right. So then they introduced themselves, shook hands, heard their ages, 8 and 6, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, that makes a lot of sense. I heard you arguing when I came up the stairs. And they looked at me, and they looked at each other. And I said, it's okay. I have sisters. That's what we do. I'm the oldest, so I'm obviously always right. Zoe, I assume you were correct in this situation. You were right. And she goes, I said, well, I'll teach you. There are ways to always be right.
Yeah, the arguing thing has been a theme of late. The bickering.
They get along well,
They
but
do.
when it goes
They spend a
south,
lot
it
of time
goes
together.
fast and hard.
This is where jujitsu comes in handy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're our friend, the dog trainer. He
Mike.
always tells us that when the males fight, it's like for dominance, and if the females fight, it's to the death.
Yep.
With the dogs, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of
Same
like
in humans.
Humans, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Basically. Oh, well. And they wonder why we need separate classes and camps to taper ourselves. Okay, so welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're excited to be here.
I don't know how much Travis has told you about what we do and why we do it and how we do it, but rest assured, we have no idea what we're doing, not only in this podcast, but as parents in general. I don't know. Do you know what you're doing in any part of your life? You know how to turn the sauna on.
I do. I think I know I can sauna well. I kind of understand how to teach jujitsu, and then I'm pretty much just faking it in everything else.
Mm-hmm. You're humble, but not wrong.
No, it's like blind leading the blind.
Yeah, basically. So we, the Growing Gorillas podcast was kind of an offshoot of, I don't know if it was an offshoot so much as it's kind of a tribute to our last 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears as parents, 21 years, where we kind of fumbled our way through everything. And I mean, we tried hard. We've always tried hard. I don't think we've ever called in a day as a parent. But gosh, wouldn't it have been nice when you signed on the dotted line to be discharged from the hospital that someone could have told you like, oh, there's other people who have done what you're doing and been where you are and understand kind of what it means and what it feels like to be in your shoes. You should totally listen to them because maybe they'll at least, if nothing else, they'll commiserate with you. And that was kind of where the podcast came together, was that we wanted to invite our friends and maybe even not yet friends to sit down and say what works for you, what didn't work for you, and where are you now, and exchange some war stories, and hopefully someone gets something out of it.
It's interesting, even though we do kind of a nutrition and health podcast, more and more the questions that we get are related to parenting, which clearly means that we have some sort of a facade going on that people think that we're competent and have any type of an idea about anything. But I think it is just kind of that sense that like, okay, I'm trying to navigate like social media and feeding the kids and exercise and school and like all this stuff. And is what I'm doing insane? Is it totally, just off the rails? We had a conversation with Zoe before we left the house because this like iPhone, social media, like we've been very tight on that. We let them play a little bit of games and then we see that they lose their minds and then the stuff goes away and we have these conversations with them. And I told her, I'm like, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I do know that if this was as good as like exercise or jujitsu or riding a bike, I would let you do it all day long. But it looks like it makes people crazy. So I'm concerned that I'm going to make a mistake as a parent. And she was just looking at me like, I could just see. What do you call it? The resting bitch face?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
kids
The
do it
RBF.
too. Like kids can do it too. It's not like resting bitch face for a kid, but it's sort of like, you know, the narrowed eyes. Like,
narrowed eyes.
Come on.
They just
really?
check out is what they do.
Exactly. My kids' eyes would sink back into their heads, and I know they were like going through their Rolodex of cuss words that they were calling me.
Yeah.
And part of it too, I think, is we didn't start the podcast just for advice, but also just for, I mean, to let people know that other people have made the same mistakes. So it's one of those things where it's like, you're not the only one. Like, we've all kind of messed up, and it's not permanent, hopefully. And I don't know. I think sometimes it's nice just to hear somebody else's story and be like, oh, good, I'm not the only one who did that, or I'm not the only one who felt like I failed that day, or I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
So, and part of we got a lot of the same thing because, you know, we have hundreds of kids at the gym, and then if people look at our kids and constantly come up to us and tell us, oh, what great kids we have and this and that. And part of it was just kind of poke a hole in that as well, because I think sometimes people look at our kids and look at us and they think we've got it figured out. And we absolutely don't have it figured out. We're fortunate, like we do have 4 great kids. They're doing really awesome things, but you know, a lot of that is luck.
Right. Right.
I think you actually bring up a good point that if someone looks to you, or in our case, looks to the 4 of us they look up to us for some reason. You know, nutrition for us. Jiu-jitsu, I guess. I don't really know what they look at. I mean, we're just the coaches. We take their money and teach their kids to choke each other. They look up to us for something.
Sure.
So they automatically kind of assume that, oh God, you might be able to help me in this other area. You know, explain to me, how do I deal with this child, or how do I deal with my parents, or how do I deal with, you know, fill in the blank.
Yeah, we were just talking about this on the last podcast, and it's funny how you know, you're a fitness coach, or you're a jiu-jitsu coach, or you're a nutritionist, or whatever, and then pretty soon it's like, yeah, so I'm really having these problems with my marriage, or hey, my kid's struggling in school. You think you could talk to him after class? And it's like you become a lot more as a coach than a coach for that specific thing. And I think that's what you're saying too. It's like people start to look to you for one thing, and then pretty soon they're like, oh, well, they're helping me with my jiu-jitsu. I wonder if they could help me figure out how to balance my checkbook or whatever. And a lot of times it's just not our specialty.
But speaking of specialties, we do have some very specific questions for y'all, because, I mean, you obviously have some areas of expertise. Nutrition.
Just ask us twice and we'll have a completely different answer each time, because we just make it up each time. And then you can pick whichever one you want to run with. Yeah.
Perfect. Do any of them involve Reese's peanut butter cups? That's what I
All
want to
of
know.
them.
Okay, good. Then.
Yeah, so that was one of the things when Keith and I were talking about having you guys on. It was like, well, you know what'd be cool is we haven't had anyone on to talk about like nutrition for kids. Like, I mean, I think it's the same as it would be for adults, but I don't know, maybe it's different. Like maybe at different stages of development, the types of food, how much of the types of food you eat, maybe that changes over time. As you age, it seems like my metabolism's changed, what I can eat and what I can't eat and all that. So kind of wanted to hear your guys' thoughts, not just with your own kids, but just your general opinions on, you know, at different ages, what do you think's ideal for?
Oh man, do you want to?
I mean, very similar to with adults, like kids, like foods are engineered to be hyper palatable, right? So like our kids too, like you see it in the supermarket, oh, I want this. All the processed stuff is made to be tasty and addictive so that you want more and you can't have just one, which is what you wrote about in Wired to Eat. And we see that with our own kids. Sagan is a little bit more of our kind of sugar bug, like she'll gravitate towards that a little bit more. And she also has your blood sugar response. Like I tend to have a better ability to handle carbs, so I can eat a little bit more carbs and I don't get the hangry thing.
I really hope I'm like you.
and Zoe is a little bit more like me, but Sagan, like if she eats a bunch of sugar,
if she doesn't get enough protein, like you just
she turns
see her
into a
start
demon spawn.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And you can see the whole affect change. Like usually she's a great kid, super funny, and she just shifts into this mode where she's like confrontational, and she will
super contrarian, like that's her nature anyway, but like it goes to another level.
Is he like that when he doesn't get enough protein? Does he get...
Well, I never do that.
He doesn't do that because he
it's just not worth it. Yeah. But I mean, for the broader question, the kid nutrition for us has been try to set up good habits, and then also and it is funny the advice that we give to folks when they're trying to lose weight, usually like that's when want to get healthier, lose weight, get in shape and all that. Clean out the pantry, take everything that's dodgy, donate it. Like nobody it lays in bed at night thinking about chicken breast and broccoli. It's like the Little Debbie snack cakes and stuff like that. And so we've tried to kind of build things around that. So, we eat some protein and some veggies. The kids don't like veggies, so they eat fruit, and I'm fine with that. It's kind of like do one or the other. I don't really care, but and even as time has gone on, I'm just kind of like, okay, just eat the protein. I'm fine, but like with chocolate, we'll find that if we do some good quality kind of dark chocolate, we'll just let them self-monitor. They go in, they grab a couple of pieces, and they're totally good. But if they get a hold of like some Hershey's or something like that, I don't know if you've seen like the Fantastic
cocaine.
Mr. Fox, where they're just eating and parts are flying everywhere. So we've just tried to set stuff up like that. There's this Rebel ice cream, which is like a keto ice cream. The kids will go self-serve. They'll scoop it up. They'll eat it. They're like, that was really good. But then they're done. And then a regular, legit ice cream, they would eat a whole pint, they'd eat another pint, and it's I'm exactly the same way.
I'll eat a half gallon.
Yeah.
We don't keep ice cream in the house.
No, we just don't. And so we've tried to set stuff up like that where we have good options, but I just kind of pay attention to, is there a self-moderating element to
Interesting.
it? And even getting like chicharrones or some of the...
and we tried
that's what I offered you today, babe, and you made it.
What's a chicharrone?
Oh my gosh, Kisa.
Pork rinds.
Have you never had a chicharrone?
No.
I tried to get. I was like, babe,
They're really
I'm
good.
like, babe, I forgot all about pork rinds, and they're so good, and they're just like, they're such a good replacement for chips.
They are. In guacamole or salsa?
Okay, guacamole.
Or just
You
by
had me at
themselves.
guacamole
Yeah,
or
it's
salsa,
great.
but-
It is a little bit of a culture shock coming from Texas to here, because Texas, they have chicharrones like in
you
churches
couldn't find
and
them.
stuff.
You
like
finally
can't.
found them at Super One and like some...
I'll never be able to hear that word again without having
fried
a
pork,
gag reflex.
fried pork skins. I'm surprised you don't know about that.
I just didn't know they were called chicharrones.
Well,
Pork
that's the
rinds is
Spanish
what I
version.
grew up
Rinds,
with.
yeah.
Pork
But our
rinds.
kids will smash those, but they will moderate. Whereas every once in a while we'll get even some of like the Siete chips and stuff like that. They'll crush a whole bag.
Tostitos hint of lime.
Yeah. Yes.
And then my stomach hurts for days.
Yep.
What about like the other thing I was trying to get you on was some of the cheese chip products?
Oh yeah, like
What's your
the
guys' thoughts on
Parmesan
those?
crisps and those are delicious.
I love those. And
Yeah,
it's hit and miss with the
Those get a
kids.
pass for kids, or
So we don't do gluten in our house just because
I'm
of
super reactive.
Robb's really
so yeah.
reactive, and we don't think the girls are super reactive to gluten, but Zoe in Texas developed an allergy that we weren't sure was part environmental because there's a lot of cedar and different things blooming there, and it's humid all the time.
Yeah.
And if like dietary things were kind of overlaying. So we noticed it like 2 months after we moved, she started doing this like like constant.
like phlegm in her throat?
Like, yeah. And so I would ask her, and she's like, I feel like I have something in my throat. I know. And we all need some water.
that was just COVID. That's different.
COVID. I know.
Yeah. And so we're like trying to figure out, like, you know, we had gone out to dinner with some friends that night, and there was creme brulee for dessert. And so I was like, okay, is it the dairy? So we really started paying attention to what foods were potentially triggering it. And so anyway, we don't think there's a gluten allergy with the kids. I don't have an overt gluten allergy like Robb, but we keep it out of the house anyway. My mom had an autoimmune disease. His mom had autoimmune disease. So like, we just don't want to mess with that given the genetics. But yeah, like, I think there's a lot of foods in our modern environment that are just kind of, you know, they're aggravating little ones, and they might not even know, like, you know, parents might not notice that know that it's a food that might be contributing to a behavior or, how a child is acting.
And so you just have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And we talk a
aware.
lot about it. Yeah. So we're like, Zoe, I don't know if it's dairy. Let's cut out cheese for a little while. Mom, why do I have to be allergic to everything? Because she's also allergic to our cats. And she started doing horseback riding, and then she was getting it was almost like an assault. Like everything that she tried was kind of making her
Is she allergic
react.
to jujitsu?
No, fortunately not. No.
Yeah, So
Go ahead.
Or I was just going to say, I think just we would just lay it out on the table. This is what we think is going on. We're not sure. A lot of people find if they cut this out, it helps. So let's try it. Oh, okay. So she was a little reluctant, obviously sad that she, would have to give up cheese for a little while or whatever it was we thought was compounding the issue. But, I think
So she's 8.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that? I mean, do you feel like does that create, and I guess let me put a little bit of background here. I've always been a staunch, the children must eat perfectly all the time since the day they were born. Am I exaggerating?
No, our kids were definitely deprived of most of the food products that the average child. I mean, to the point, like fast food. It seems like kids nowadays. I mean, they show up to the gym before class with Dairy Queen, and I'm like, okay, you have to get on the mat in 5 minutes,
right?
And you're drinking a Blizzard. But our kids, it was like if grandma and grandpa came and got them, that'd be the one time they'd have McDonald's. Mm-hmm. And it was to the point where Kisa caught them eating colored dog biscuits because there were no treats in the house.
that is awesome.
Okay, we do have some stuff to share here. Okay.
It's true. They would climb on top of the the washing machine to get the colored dog biscuits.
And this was something I was going to ask you guys about too, because we're not soda drinkers. We never have been. So we never have.
Well, that's not true.
You drink soda?
I used to. 3:00 every day I'd have a Coke.
Okay. Well,
until we moved here, 15, 14, 13, however
behind
long.
My back. I haven't had a soda for a long time.
When we moved here, I was like, you know what? This is a good break. I don't need to do this anymore. And that's when I started drinking Perrier. Then now there's all sorts of seltzer waters to drink.
Mm-hmm.
I like that carbonation in the middle of the afternoon.
So I was just curious, in the house, for the girls, what are their other choices for beverage besides water?
Yeah. So we've never done juice. The only time they've ever had juice is at either friend's house. Sometimes people will do those little, and thankfully most of our friends eat kind of similarly to us. So it would be those honest juices with lower sugar.
Airplanes.
If we go in an airplane, we'll let them, and the stewardess comes by, they can have an apple juice or an orange juice, but we don't buy juice. As far as the soda goes, we've started doing the Zevias, and
we do a lot of
and they
those.
can have that, but we don't do regular soda.
We drink the snot out of LaCroix and bubbly and all the
Zevias
flavor
and
Topo Chico.
The kids like Topo Chico a lot. Yeah, it's
you don't have it in Montana.
Yeah.
When I was here for the women's retreat, we went to that place and asked, and they didn't have Topo Chico. So it's from Mexico, but Coca-Cola bought them, I think.
Yeah.
And anyway,
it's just hypercarbonated,
super carbonated mineral
I had
water.
some with you guys when we were in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Basically, if it sounds like a Spanish word, I probably don't know what it is.
Yeah. Well, if you like carbonated water, you would love
Okay.
Topo Chico. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
But the kids pretty self-regulate on that. And in the summer, they will make some lemonade. It's lemon juice, and then we do some stevia in it and mix it up. And sometimes we'll freeze that into ice cubes, and then they'll put that in some water. So we do try to figure out options that they legit like, but that they will self-regulate with, and they just don't go crazy.
And in the
with
winter,
it.
occasionally we'll do a hot chocolate or something.
Yeah.
But the liquid sugar is, the work that Robb has done his whole life, basically, liquid sugar is one of the number one things that gets people. You're just consuming it, and it leads to very poor outcomes with regards to health and body composition.
Talk
and stuff.
to Grandpa Tim about that.
Yeah, we were just talking about this the other day at breakfast because I was watching somebody drink Dr. Pepper at breakfast. It was 8:30 in the morning.
2 of them.
2
Biggies.
big ones. And I'm just we got in the car and I was like, man, if they just cut out the soda alone, could you imagine how many calories they're drinking a day just in soda?
Well, my dad has never had a weight problem. Good old Timbo. He's survived mostly on, I would say he's mostly keto, except for the fact that he drinks the snot out of Dr. Pepper and Bud Light. so
keto-ish.
So basically he just eats hamburgers and steak.
And he's also diabetic now.
Yeah. So diabetes, heart disease. He smokes a lot. Less now.
Get him onto the Dr. Zevia. It tastes just like Dr.
I assume
Pepper.
you don't let
I
the kids
tried that
smoke at
once
home, right?
years ago, and he was like,
Not having
Get
it.
this out of my...
"What is this horse shit? The fuck?" But he, I mean, it was no wonder, right? He was having all these health problems, and my sister, who's a nurse practitioner, was like, "I know it's diabetes. I know it's diabetes. I mean, look at his diet. Of course, it's diabetes." And sure enough, that was it. And I mean, clearly, like, not necessarily, I'm not a doctor, but
She plays one in bed.
if you're lucky.
Just being honest. This is a totally honest.
Oh, yeah, we cuss a
podcast.
lot. Well, we don't. I do.
I actually have the worst mouth of the two of us, too. I don't cuss in public.
You curse
But
at the most inappropriate times possible.
Really?
Like, literally. Like, I curse a lot, like in the podcast and stuff
could
like
be
that. But then
terrible.
we'll get into a little bit of a mixed company deal, and I can button it up. And she just goes bananas. I'm looking out. I'm like, where did you come
Yeah,
from?
in like
knew I
real
loved
life,
you. I
in
knew
real
you were
life
my
interactions, in real life interactions, I do tend to, yeah.
I tend to curse more in our close circles, but I don't know. I just, for some reason, like in class and on the podcast, I just like, no, not going to do it. Kisa's going to do it for me anyways.
Yeah, that's true. I'll make up. Anyway, my point was that, yes, those eating habits. And I appreciate, how do you think the girls came about self-regulation?
I mean, it's kind of observational. So do they just completely go crackhead on X, and if they do, then we maybe don't have it, or it's pretty intermittent. So we try to find things that they like, but they would do an eighth of a box instead of all of the box, or package or whatever. Yeah. And we do this kind of speed bump deal where we try to, it's like, eat your protein, and then it's kind of, if you want something else, then we're fine. Like if we're eating out and they're not driving us nuts and they motor through their protein and like they've got some ice cream there, okay, well, we'll do a scoop of ice cream, So, but what we find is if they just really focus on the protein, then everything else kind of falls into place, because then half the time they'll eat part of the ice cream and not the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But given they're left to their own devices, particularly the eldest one, if you put the protein and the ice cream out there, then she would eat the ice cream, want a second ice cream, gnaw at the protein a little bit, and then be hungry in like 20 minutes.
But I think we've done we've had enough discussions about how food makes you feel. Like they've done birthday parties where, just before we left Texas, some of our neighbors, they had a daughter who was just a year older than Zoe, had her birthday, pizza, ice cream, cake, the whole thing. And Bethany calls me and she's like, "Oh, I forgot, it's not gluten-free. Zoe's asking if it's gluten-free." And I'm like, she'll be fine. She can eat it, and so she ate the pizza, which I knew she would have no problem eating the cake. She was just more concerned that the pizza was gluten-free. And then she ate the cake and the ice cream. But then on the way home, she's like, "Mom, my tummy doesn't feel very good. I think I ate too much of the cake, and it was too sweet. Like the frosting was so sweet. Like
sweet.
So we've, I think the more that folks can get kids aware of like, okay, that tasted really good, but I don't feel so, like, just aware of how food makes you feel can be a really powerful tool for kids.
And it was kind of interesting. This was when we were still in Reno, but we'll do family pizza night. Nicki will spin up some pizzas. And both of the girls the same day, separately though, came up to me on like the Saturday after pizza night. And they were like, "Can we have a little protein with this? Just like some chicken or something with pizza night?" Because they would just crush the pizza, not really that much protein on it, and they both
hungry.
felt like shit. Yeah. And
they felt like
they were
crap.
both like, "I just didn't feel good. Like, can I have a little protein with it?" So we'll cook a little steak or something, and they'll actually do a little bit of that. So I really count that as a win. I think that is kind of a life skill or a habit.
Yeah.
That, like, if they can do that and they go to college or work or do whatever they're going to do, and they're like, "I'm going to have a little bit of protein with my pizza when I'm out," they're going to be golden. Like, they'll be totally good to go. Yeah.
That would probably be smart for me too.
Have some protein with your ice cream.
With my pizza, find myself it's weird how you're able to eat like an entire pizza by yourself because it tastes so good and you'll eat it so quickly but you're like halfway through the pizza and then you're just like, well, it tastes good. I'm just going to eat it. And then I feel the same way, like shit afterwards. But
I feel like that Thai pie from Mackenzie River.
I had some for lunch today.
Oh, you did? I was hoping to have that for dinner.
But in my defense, it was like Rob was in my head because I was like, you know what? I'm going to eat all that pork. And then if I'm still hungry, I'm going to have pizza. And I only had one slice of pizza because I had the pork first.
Oh, there you go.
But I'm not hungry for dinner now.
So you get to eat alone. No doctor tonight.
Right, no doctor tonight.
But it's funny, we do these resets as part of our community 3 times a year. And these are folks that have usually followed us for years. And I mean, they're pretty well steeped in this stuff. Nobody eats enough protein. I mean, just nobody ends up eating enough protein. Even the like super geeky, folks that have been following this stuff a long time. And so I think that this is just kind of an endemic thing. Protein's kind of expensive. It's hard to fix. You're kind of anxious about overcooking it and then wasting it. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
It doesn't come like ready to eat.
Right.
I mean,
and the stuff that does come ready to eat's got a bunch of other crap in it too. So it's like
so here is the secret.
Okay.
Do you have an air fryer?
No.
Okay.
Do we have an air fryer?
No.
Okay.
Oh, we have an Instapot.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Okay.
So
we have a Traeger.
It's not the same either. Traegers are amazing. They take time.
We have a new refrigerator.
It takes lots of time.
New oven.
But this air fryer thing, which we just got one for Christmas, you can take
like
any meat. It plugs in on your counter. You can take any meat, hamburger, steak, pork chop, shrimp, fish, whatever it is, put it in there, push a button, go do your thing. You might need to flip it and do one more session. And it comes out as if it was cooked on a grill or...
Really?
Chicken wings come out better than the oven.
Is
like
it
they're
fast?
Crispy. It's fast.
Yeah. And it's an air fryer, so you don't have to...
There's no oil.
It doesn't have a bunch of oil in it?
No oil.
No oil.
No oil.
Okay, so
lots of people will do
like
like French fries or cauliflower or anything.
You'll have to adjust it a little bit. Like it's got a preset, and then you'll just you'll notice you're like, oh, okay, this meat's that thick, so
like
I'll
steak,
dial it down or up a little bit.
It has temperature and time. So there's like a steak button. So let's say you put a steak in there, you push the steak button, you push start, and then it'll come out medium. It'll come out rare in the middle there. So you can either up the temperature, up the time, or it's amazing for people who don't want to sit over a stove, who aren't like cooking types. I feel like it's like the answer to the protein problem.
Yeah, when our kids were living at home, when they were younger.
We're going through that crisis right now.
Yeah, we're, in fact, Joe, our youngest, who's 17, he's still at home. He's finishing up his senior year. But the other day I called him. I was like, are you going to be home for dinner? Like, what's your story today? He's like, no. I said, no, he said, maybe. And he said, what are you having for dinner? And I was like, I don't know. Your dad and I are probably just going to do a charcuterie board or something. He's like, man, y'all eat like birds. You're getting old. Because we do just like peace at night. But when the kids were at home, there was meal planning, right? Because it's 4 kids, 6 of us total. It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks. And it's timing, and it's what day of the week is it, who's training and what, and everybody's going, 6 ways from Sunday. It was intense. And I would have loved to have had an air fryer then, because so much of what we did was like, okay, it's either got to be, a 10-minute grill, like flank steak is my best friend, or it's, whatever that's pre-made that I can just pop in the oven to warm. Yeah. It was hard. It was really hard.
We do a lot of soups also. Like we'll do the kettle and fire bone broth, like the prepackaged bone broth, and I'll put that in a pot, and then either shrimp or even hamburger, or like dice up chicken really quick, and that's like...
And simple soups. Like I think people think it has to be this like elaborate recipe. Like we eat so simple. Like it's like, sometimes it's like meat and slices of orange. Like it can be that simple.
That's a third of our meals.
Or like soup. It's like meat and broth and maybe some carrots, or the kids don't really like
basically
onions.
Ours is meat and broccoli.
Yeah, broccoli's so easy, and that's my favorite.
And then if I'm feeling really fancy, I'll make a cheese sauce to put on top of the broccoli. I don't know if you guys know this, but our oldest son, who has a seizure disorder, he's been on the actual like medical ketogenic diet twice. In fact, the first time he went on it he was
under 2.
Yeah, I was under 2 because I was pregnant with the twins.
Yep, you bed rest and all kinds of
And when we sat down and the nutritionist explained like the 4-to-1, 3-to-1, we were like, you want us to mix his peanut butter with butter?
I mean, this was 20 years ago.
Right.
20 years ago,
No.
we had to buy a scale and everything. And
It was psychotic.
I can't tell you how many times I shredded carrots and mixed peanut butter and butter. And then the problem then too was I was working full time. Kisa's always worked full time as well. And then when she wasn't, it was because she was on bed rest. And so we have like not quite a 2-year-old, and I'm having to drop him off at daycare in the morning. And I'm just thinking to myself, all this effort, all this work, all he has to do is like pick up an M&M
Right.
off of the
Raisins.
floor.
Anything. One thing. Yeah, like some kind-hearted substitute daycare worker could give him a slice of apple, which everyone would think is,
The
and then
healthy
it's
choice.
done.
Right.
And we have to start all over to,
Yeah.
no, it was terrifying. But I guess my point in all that was how far we've come as a society that 20 years ago, in fact, our pediatrician, who I love and certainly saved my life and my children's life on a number of occasions, she even sat down with me and was like, listen, kids need carbs. They need it for brain development. Like they are burning through calories every day. And Ted's diet was so strict that she was truly concerned about it. And it was only because she trusted so deeply our pediatric neurologist who said, look, this is all I got. We've done all the meds. This is the last hope for this kid for seizure control. And unfortunately, it didn't help stop the seizures, but we noticed so many behavior changes. And we could tell when his ratios were too high. We could tell when his blood sugar was too high. You know, trying to balance out. Travis was talking about carrots. We had to actually cut back the carrots because the whatchamacallit?
Just the glucose in it
Yeah,
a
the
little
glucose.
too high.
Yep, way too high. And so then I was like, all right, so he's got to have celery. Okay, fine. Your freebie is a black olive, but one. You get one black olive.
It's a lot of heavy cream.
So
Yep.
much heavy cream. That as parents, I mean, it was painstaking. It was so tedious.
And not much support at that time for,
None.
like now, I mean, we have people in our circles who have children who are on a medically supervised ketogenic diet for one reason or another, but there's so much like support online.
And at that time, there was also this growing population, because that was back in the day of Yahoo groups. I am saved this day because of those Yahoo groups and all those moms on Yahoo groups. But there were a number of people at that time who were starting to connect their children's diets to the, I don't know if it would be symptoms, but the behaviors that came out of their kids who are on the autism spectrum. And there was, I got lost like down the rabbit hole for a solid year on all of that. And I can't remember, there was a guy who developed some diet that was helpful for those kids. And I took a lot of that from Ted's experience, or my experience with Ted, and meal planning to the other kids. Because, 4 kids, 3.5 years, you can kind of do a trial and error pretty quick. You don't have to really put much more effort into it. I mean, that's a lot of effort. But
Well, and it makes it a lot easier for the kid who can't have all the other stuff.
right.
If everybody's on the
If
same
everybody's
page.
on the same page,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes. I think we had a above average protein-based diet for
Protein
our
and
kids.
fat.
Yeah.
The kids had a lot
than,
of fat.
than most people, just because of that. We didn't know what we were doing necessarily, other than kind of helping Ted deal with the fact that he couldn't have all that other stuff too.
So what I noticed back then, and I see that a little bit now, is that obviously, like everything in parenting or in life, there's this broad spectrum, right? And so you've got the parents who really could care less, and you've got the parents who care almost too much. And then somewhere in the middle, I think, is where we're all supposed to fall, where, we're not creating Karen Carpenters out of our children. And we're also, was that rude?
No.
I don't think so. Okay.
It's
thank
just
you.
true.
But we're also, showing them how to pay attention, that same pediatrician who was nervous at the time, the best advice that she ever gave me was, look, your job is to prepare and serve the food. Their job is to eat it. You don't get involved in their job. They don't get involved in your job, which means you don't care what they like and don't like. It's served. They don't get to make decisions as 2-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds, even 8-year-olds. You serve it. And if they want to eat it, great. If they don't want to eat it, let them know when the next meal is. And
yeah, that was her best advice.
Oh my God, that was a lifesaver.
It was like if they didn't
for me.
eat dinner, it's like, well, breakfast is tomorrow.
Yeah, we've lived and died by that. And we'll tell them, like, they'll be picking at something, and I get it. I'm like, okay, I know that they're not going to like this as much, but I just bought a half a cow, and we're going to eat all the fiddly bits. And some days the steak is awesome, and some days it's a little chewy, and I will work to cut it up a little smaller for you. But it's like, if you don't want to eat it, I'm clearly not going to force you.
Right.
But it's going to be tomorrow when you get to eat again. You're not going to go raid the refrigerator or anything else
Right.
like that. Yeah. Yeah.
So what other, I guess a couple of questions. First of all, like you pointed out, there were no resources for us back then. There was no support whatsoever. We were the crazy ones on the block, you know,
For that and other reasons.
many
but
other reasons probably. Revert back to doctors in bed, right? But so what resources are there for parents looking to feed their kids, fuel their kids appropriately, helpfully? But then also what kinds of, I mean, I know Dr. Lisa's advice, your job is to feed them, their job is to eat. That was, I lived by that forever. So what other tips have worked for you?
Man, I mean, really being very protein centric, I think helps a lot. Like starting off with that as a baseline, this is what's served for dinner. Like that's a biggie too. Like not trying to custom it, particularly if you have multiple kids. Like people will start trying, oh, well, little Jimmy wants this and Sally wants that. And that's a disaster. It's interesting though, when you go to look for advice on this, like the institutional information is terrible. You know, it's like,
Say more about that.
you know, all the FDA kind of food pyramid,
Everything
food
is-
guide type
yeah.
stuff is really, when you auger into it, what passes muster on that is terrible. So then when you look for any, like you literally have to go find pseudo-scientist peddling people like us to get, I think, something that's a little bit credible. And then you have to be comfortable with kind of reading between the lines and going to your doctor and, well, do they eat lots of fruits and vegetables? It's like, well, they eat, yes. You know, they eat a lot of fruit. They eat virtually no vegetables, and they're 98th percentile on height and 45th percentile on weight, and they kick everybody's ass at all the sports they do, and they do well cognitively, and so they're good, you know. So you just learn to lie or lie by omission on certain things,
Right.
you know. But it's, I think you kind of pick like what your home base is. Like if you want to be vegan, find somebody who's credible there, kind of ancestral health, paleo, like you find some home base, and then hopefully you just are experimental. This is why I've liked Straight Blast Gym so much, because it's so empirical. It's like, does this work? You know?
Right.
And okay, it works pretty well here, but then it starts breaking down there. And so you just need to be put on a little bit of a scientist's hat and experiment a little bit. And like we notice with our kids, Zoe can handle a few more carbs and not have that like roller coaster and get herself into self-sabotage. Whereas like Sagan, we have to intervene a little bit more with her.
And I
on
think
that.
to the degree that you can talk to your kids about like protein and fat and carbs and what the different foods are and how they help your brain grow and they help you get strong and fast. Like Zoe loves to run. She's really fast. Like, does this food make me fast, Mom? Yes. If you eat more of this, it'll make you fast. Like, figure out, simplify it for them.
I was interviewed by these guys, Nerd Fitness. They're really cool. Like that, it's literally nerd fitness. Like they get into like DC comics and Marvel comics, and they have debates over that. But they have a great kids program there. And what they ask kids when they first get going, who's your favorite superhero? And then they lay out who the superhero is. What do you think they eat for breakfast? And it's never garbage. Like the kids stop and
Captain
they're like,
Crunch.
It's just the kids intuitively know, oh, well, they probably eat really well. And so they start from stuff like that, you know, and it was real. I thought it was genius,
bacon,
you know.
lots of bacon.
Yeah, lots of bacon.
All my superheroes eat bacon.
Clearly, yeah.
Are there any superheroes that like Reese's? Again, back
Probably
to my
all of them.
original.
Yeah.
I
Probably all of
think,
them.
is Fat Albert a
I don't know.
superhero?
Probably
E.T.
not.
He kind of is.
E.T.
Yeah,
Yeah.
E.T.
That's true. He loved
Those were
Reese's.
Reese's Pieces.
It's in the neighborhood, though.
It's close.
Yeah.
I don't like the hard shell, though. But I do like Reese's peanut butter cups.
So good. They're so good.
They're good for you too. Rob was telling me right before he's not going to say
Perfect
that on air.
fat carb ratio. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He said it's like an egg. It's like just the perfect balance.
We, again, when our kids were little, they were all kind of little at kind of the same time, but not really technically. But it was just hard. Can I just say that? It was really hard.
So say that it was 4 kids within
3.5 years.
because of the twins.
The twins, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and because of that whole doctor in bed thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Ted was 3.5 when Joe was born, and the twins were in the middle.
They were
Ted.
all in diapers at the same time. Well,
Wow.
Ted, because of some developmental delays due to the seizure disorder and neurological disorder, he was a little bit delayed. And because Joe was kind of close to Stella and Ricky's age, I just kind of shoved him forward. And so basically all the kids got potty trained at the same time. They learned to ride bikes at the same time. They learned to swim at the same time.
well, Joe almost drowned, but
4 times. But who's counting? There was a lot of that where I kind of crammed them all together, and I tried to feed them all about the same. And poor baby Joe developed some allergies because the easiest, best thing to feed any of the kids when they need a snack was what we called a peanut butter spoon. You just dip that in the Adams. There's your peanut butter spoon. And it turns out you're not supposed to feed little kids peanut butter or strawberries or eggs
or tuna fish sandwiches.
Well, the tuna fish I don't think was that big of a deal.
My aunts and mom and grandma and everybody freaked out when you did that.
How old was he? I never heard the tuna fish thing.
So he was 9 months old, and
We were at my Papa Joe's funeral.
And so our baby Joe and his cousin also has a baby Joe, and they're like 6 weeks apart, and we're all standing in the living room at the memorial or the funeral. The family's all together, and both the baby Joes are hungry at the same time, and cousin Dana pulls out a bottle for her baby Joe. And I sit my baby Joe in the car seat and gave him a quarter of a tuna fish sandwich. And to this day, all the aunts are like, oh, God, what happened to that child? But my point in all this was that what I hear you saying is that you have to pay attention to each kid and how they act and react. And maybe it's not so much what they like and don't like, but what are they attracted to in terms of, where's their palate? Ricky loves sour foods and spicy foods, and that just kills all the other kids. So it was easy for him to get into the pickles and to love the meats and all of those things. And
yeah, and he would eat sushi with me even when he was in elementary school.
yeah, but the rest of us,
Similar to pork rinds.
yeah. So how do you do that other than just paying attention?
So like
Do you try different foods?
We definitely try
Okay.
different foods. We definitely introduce different things. Like Sagan, our youngest, likes kimchi and sauerkraut.
She's our spicier.
Yeah.
Like she likes to have barbecue sauce that has a little heat to it, where Zoe would rather not have
And
any
she'll actually
sauce.
put some pretty hot taco sauce on when we have tacos and stuff like that. Like she'll get some decent heat, and Zoe will dabble in it. And she's adventurous enough. She's like, I'll try it, but she's like, I didn't like that, But so we've kind of found some condiments that both of them like. Kind of
Zoe
peripheral
loves
to the main
Kalamata
meal.
olives. Sagan doesn't like olives at all. Like she'll try one of just try this one. This is a different kind. Oh, I don't like them. So we offer it. But it's not like we're buying. Like we eat the same things pretty regularly too. So it's not like at this point. At this point, now that they 6 and 8.
Do they favor any type of meat over the other, like chicken, pork, beef? Like, do they have a preference?
Do either one of them not like fish, or?
Zoe likes fish better.
And loves shrimp, and Sagan, she'll eat it, but it's not her favorite.
Yeah. Zoe loves hot dogs.
Sagan does not like hot dogs, but she'll eat pineapple sausage, like the
hot dogs. What's a good hot dog? I love hot dogs, and
Costco makes or sells now. It's called Teton Waters Ranch, and they're 100% grass fed.
You should write
beef.
this down.
And they're
sell them
so
like
good, and you can get a big, and they also.
That's
I don't
my
know
guilty pleasure.
They're so good.
Love hot dogs.
I don't know if this Costco here in Kalispell carries it. We didn't see it when we were there last time, but and I don't remember the brand, but they make a bison hot dog.
Oh, interesting.
Also,
That we got
yeah.
those in
Yeah.
Texas. Those were good.
We haven't even looked for like local dogs, huh?
But
We have a lot of good meat counters.
Mm-hmm.
when we were dating, hot dogs were a staple for dinner. Chili
What was
dogs,
the name of
ground
that?
dogs.
Nick's Coney Island,
Yeah, Nick's Coney Island. Yeah.
Yeah.
Portland.
I used to eat the hot dogs in front of Home Depot. I go to Costco sometimes, and I just show them my card, and then I make a
Go to
loop,
the food court.
and I just go get hot dogs.
I forgot how much you love hot dogs.
Yeah, Der Wiener Schnitzel. Have you ever
Yeah.
been to a deer?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah.
They had one in Reading.
Yeah, they did.
So I think, especially when it comes to nutrition, what I hear a lot of parents doing, again, that spectrum, right? That we're to the hardcore end of the spectrum. They're like, listen, tonight we're having kimchi, and you will all eat kimchi. And if you don't eat it, I will put it in the refrigerator and you can eat it for breakfast. I mean, that doesn't encourage good nutrition or even a propensity to experiment if you're going to be punished for the things that you don't like. So obviously you're not doing that.
No.
No, definitely not. Like, we throw it out and we encourage them to check out new things. And then even if it's been 6 months or a year since they've had it, it's like your palate changes. And everyone, I forget what, every once in a while we'll throw something out that, we tried and it didn't stick. And they're like, oh, this is pretty good now, and we'll mention that. Do you remember back in Reno, you didn't like this? And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So
It is funny how your palate changes like that, especially when you're young.
I didn't like pickled things at all. Sauerkraut, gross, all that. I'm still not going to eat kimchi.
I love kimchi.
Gross.
It's okay.
But now I love pickles and sour things, and I never used to before.
So the thing that bothered me about kimchi every time I'd ever had it smells like fish sauce, and I do not like fish sauce. Like Thai food, like and it wasn't until I was working at front desk. I must have been like 38 that I had kimchi at a restaurant with some coworkers, and it was like, wow, this is really good. And then you
really?
bought some, and then now I like it. So
All right, fine.
find
I'll
some
try it
that's
again.
like low on the
Fine.
fish sauce
Okay.
scale, and you might actually like it.
We were
So
supposed to go to Korea in April, but stupid COVID.
Done COVID.
I almost felt like there was a curse word about to come out right there, but you kept it
You
in.
sucked it back in. So Stella, how old was Stella? Maybe 10, 12?
The year she decided to try everything.
Yeah. So she was a good Wheaton girl. That's my family, where we decide we like something and then that's it. And we only eat that. In my sister's case, Kelsey, she only eats things that are fried golden. So chicken nuggets, French fries, and some cheese, and then nothing else.
A lot of
outside
Taco
that.
Bell too.
Taco Bell. But Stella had a little bit of that. And then one year she just decided that was her New Year's resolution, is I'm going to try all the things again that I think I don't like, and I'm going to try new things. And she came out of that year and said, I've learned 2 things. I like avocados, but I still don't like tomatoes.
What made her do that? Like as a 12-year-old,
to this
like
day,
how did
I
that?
have no idea, except that that's just Stella. Do you know what? We should ask her that question. Why did she decide to do that?
I don't know. I just remember as a baby, we would have steak, and she would just suck the juice out of it, and her plate would be full of these like gray balls of steak. I was just like, what are you doing?
No, she was like 6 months, 9 months. I mean, we started feeding the kids real food at 6 months minimum, and you could give her a steak and she would hold on to it and she would just sit there like it was a pacifier and suck the life.
I think really crispy bacon was one of the first things we did with
So we
our
liked
kids,
that,
and they would just
gnaw
work
on it. Yeah.
But you asked what chicken wings might be their favorite.
Oh, really? The favorite meat? Favorite protein?
Possibly between the two of them, that they would both
and
agree on.
hamburgers
And
with
hamburgers.
like melted cheese on top.
Yeah.
Everything's
Like they'll
good with
crush some
melted
chicken
cheese.
wings. Yeah. And actually both of them will do kind of the spicy chicken wings. It can't be like
really?
over the top, but they
buffalo wings.
Buffalo wings, yeah, they will smash that.
Do they like
and it turns
ribs?
out really well. They crush ribs.
They love ribs.
Okay. We'll
So I don't
remember
know
that.
how
picking
highbrow
up
it
some
is.
ribs from your mom.
But we took them to the Montana Club, and they do pretty good rack of pork ribs there, and they just annihilated it.
Have you been to DeSoto yet?
No.
No.
Oh my
What?
gosh.
Yeah, not yet.
We need a list of like all the places.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it,
Well,
it's,
we
it's-
should go to DeSoto together.
Okay.
It's closed tonight, right? It's Monday.
Yeah, Sunday, Monday they're closed. Or is it Monday, Tuesday? Or is
I
it
don't
just
know,
Monday?
but I think they're closed tonight. I was going to say maybe I will have dinner, but they smoke everything there.
They've
Okay.
got
And it's-
they've got two smokers the size of like Volkswagen Beetles,
Oh wow.
tipped upside.
And the ribs are great.
Okay.
So
Fall
good.
off the bone, just really good.
They also have really good cherry crisp and really good
Cornbread.
What about the peanut butter? Is that peanut butter cheesecake or peanut butter pie?
Any kind of cheesecake is good. But now
So
we're not
anyway,
really
the
now
dessert menu-
now we're derailing it.
Okay,
We were
sorry.
we
Back
were
to
talking
nutrition.
about
Back to
meat.
nutrition. So your girls aren't. I mean, maybe they're starting. Maybe Zoe with running is starting to enter this arena of athletics, but I found that even more challenging as a parent to navigate the world of fueling my kids when they were training. And then especially with Stella, my one and only daughter, how to fuel her training, and she's in a weight-based sport, right? Jiu-jitsu and judo, you've got weight classes. It was easy. I think it was easier for us because we were kind of trailblazers in the sport of youth jiu-jitsu in the Northwest. And so we could just call the promoters and be like, hey, listen, the weight class is going to be fluid. And instead of having preset weight classes, why don't you see who registers and then divvy up the classes based on who registers so that kids aren't
Instead
trying
of having
to make
kids
weight.
cut weight, yeah.
Right.
Because we didn't want that to happen.
Right.
But now Stella's in judo training, trying to get to that Olympic level. And I guess a couple of things. Number one, it's difficult in my experience. I didn't have anybody to talk to about how do I do this? Me having come from already an eating disordered past. And now I'm trying to tell my daughter to eat well,
But not too much.
but not too much because
Yeah.
I don't want to impose that.
Right.
Well, and just as a MMA coach too, I mean, women have a whole nother set of problems when it comes to.
Challenges, not problems, babe.
Okay.
Opportunities.
I was thinking Jay-Z, but anyways, but no, like it would like I didn't understand, and so I'd have like a female fighter who was like on weight. We'd be checking it every practice. I'm like, okay, good. Like, and we're water loading, getting ready to cut, and then the next day she comes in and she's like 5 pounds heavier than the day before. I'm like, what the hell? Like, what just happened? And then Kisa would pull me aside and she's like, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. But
It's a real thing, like water retention and
Well, and just calorie restriction in women, like it'll affect men, but it affects women so much more deeply, quickly, harder to unravel. Like once that you've gone down that kind of overreaching, overtraining deal, it's just woven into the biology there. I haven't done a ton on that. We coached a young woman who was part of the South African Olympic team, and she ended up not quite medaling, but she just missed it in sculling. But weight class sport, super anaerobically demanding, and had disordered eating past, and so it was so hairball coaching her on that. Like it was kind of like one and done. I never wanted to do it again, and it's tough. It's really, really tough.
Stella spent, we've had her with some nutritionists over the years, and the worst experience that she had, I'm actually very grateful that she had, because she was old enough and mature enough that she could reflect on it, and still young enough that I don't feel like it set deeply. But that was when it was U.S. Open in Florida, and she was she was registered for 52 kilos, and for whatever reason, Stella grows every June, and she grows, June to July, she grows dramatically. And when she was younger, I would always notice it because, her clothes, like her shorts are just a little bit shorter, like she grows taller, not just bigger, but taller. And that was the year that she had first started her cycle, and but because, she's training all the time, because she's still young, because whatever, it's up and down and not very consistent. And we got to Florida and she was overweight. And, you know, here I am. I don't even know how old she was at the time. 16?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, 16, I think. It was a couple years ago. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to. Okay, so we're going to do these baths. And, you know, we're coordinating with her. And Travis is like, well, she's just got to sweat it out. And he's back to like old school MMA, like, you just got to be tougher than the scale sort of mentality. But
I cut weight with her one time, and I said I will never cut weight with my daughter again. It's so easy when it's like you're fighters, and then when it's your 16-year-old daughter, and she's like crying and can't feel her hands and stuff, and she's in the bath, and
she's too young to cut weight, and yet it's a weight-based sport.
Right.
And there's a dramatic difference between 52 kilos and 57 kilos and 63 kilos. Well, the long story short, she missed weight by, I think, a half a pound after dying for 18 hours. And they ended up, through a series of fortunate events, a spot ended up opening up, and they moved her up to 57 kilos. And she crushed it at 57 kilos. I don't remember. I might just be exaggerating for the sake of the storyline, but she did really well at 57 kilos, and she was able to get her water back, and she was able to, you know, not only rehydrate but also refuel before she stepped on the mat. And when we came back, she said, I never want to do that again. I will never cut again. She's now competing at 63 kilos, and she just told me when we were at Western Outdoor.
Jury's still out on my end on the 63 kilos thing.
Oh, yeah. Travis and her Cowspell coach both think 63 is too big. But let me tell you, Stella's got tits and ass. Like, she is stacked like Travis's mom. She's built just like Travis's mom and your sister. And what she told me was, she said, this is really, I'm more of a woman than I've ever been, meaning I've got the curves. She said, my cycle's consistent and predictable, relatively so. And she said, and for the first time ever, I understand that my value has nothing to do with the numbers on the scale.
That's huge.
And I was like, oh, thank God. You know, at the age of 19, to hear that, knowing what I was doing at 19, and also seeing worldwide how much females struggle in combat sports, weight-based combat sports. I mean, I'm sure there's other sports that women struggle in, but those are the ones that I pay attention to.
Rowing's a big one.
Rowing
rowing, because it's a weight class sport. Yeah, it's brutal. I don't know if it's as gnarly as combat sports, because you have the whole like head trauma component. You know, you're dehydrated, and then you don't have that, you know, the cushioning and everything. But sculling's pretty rough because of the weight class element to it.
And so each person,
the whole boat, I think.
Well, it depends whether you're single or multiple people. Yeah.
So your South African athlete, was she single on her?
Yeah. So it was, she'd live or die by you know, making it work. So yeah. With your own daughters, right? They're not yet to that point. They will be. And whether they're in a weight-based athletics or a non-weight-based athletics, it's just different, right? It's different for female athletes. It's different for teenage female athletes. And again, there's just not a whole lot of information out there, and not a whole lot of support, at least that we've found. We were, again, fortunate enough. I think George was Stella's best nutritionist.
Yeah, George Lockhart.
And his whole team. And one of the first questions he asked was about her cycle. And so that's, for me, that was kind of a litmus test, like, he understands, he gets it, that it's going to change. And then also that the diet was changing, and it wasn't strict about, okay, absolutely 100% eliminate everything. He was very much like, well, how does that make you feel? What does that do for your performance? How are you sleeping? And she had to kind of track all these things, which I think helped her to have some introspection, to learn some of those introspective skills. But where are you on all that? How does that play out?
So we don't have a ton of rules in the house for the girls, but they're going to be good at math, they're going to be good at reading and writing, and then what they want to do is kind of up to them. They will either do jiu-jitsu or Thai boxing until they're like 16. Like, they're just going to have self-defense. They will know firearms handling and training. These are just some of the things that when they exit our house, they're going to have this stuff. If they choose to
Life
never
skills.
do a thing again with it, then that's fine. I deeply hope that both girls get into like cross country or something, and so the weight class. Well,
Not cross country, swimming, volleyball, something else.
Well, something that's not a weight class sport
Right.
is my.
Sorry,
is my point.
that probably comes out as being anti-cross country. I just.
Well, Zoe loves running,
I know.
so that's just
I'm
kind
thinking
of front
sprinter.
Why are you
if they
anti-cross-country?
learn a martial art, they don't have to worry about running.
Right.
Yeah. But she likes to run,
I
and
hate
she's
running.
fast, so
She
sprinting.
loves to run, and she's really good at it. And she's going to be a beanpole. Like, she'll be significantly taller than I am, probably. So yeah. So I mean, maybe, you know, when they start doing some of the kid jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff like that, which I think would be really valuable for them, just like winning and losing and just that pressure cooker and everything.
Yeah.
I think it's really valuable. And if the hook sinks in super deep, I don't know. I'll have to navigate that. Like, I've just, in the back of my head, for all of like combat sports, I've wished that they would change it such that you're kind of tracked and like you just show up at the weight that you are. Like where you were 2 weeks out, that's where you fight, you know. And I think that a lot of the wear and tear and the long-term damage, the traumatic brain injury and stuff like that is kind of an outgrowth of these, the fluid cycling and the weight loss and everything. And so like maybe there will be some shift in that direction where if you're just generally walking around at 58 kilos or whatever, that's where you go.
We talk about that all the time. It's really not that complicated of a problem, you know, because if you look at like jiu-jitsu, like if you look at like IBJJF tournaments and things like that, you're weighing in when they call your bracket.
Right.
So you're jumping on the scale and you get one chance.
Right.
You either make weight or you miss. You don't get a second shot. And if you miss, you're done.
Right.
You're just done. I think if they did something similar in other jiu-jitsu tournaments and definitely in MMA, if they just got rid of the day before weigh-in, it pretty much solves the problem.
Right.
Because you can't, you know, I've had my most extreme case. I had an athlete who actually fought on Bellator, and he would fight at 145, 146 because they weren't title fights, so they give you a pound. But we had this tradition where we'd make the weight, and then the day of the fight before we'd leave the hotel, we'd get back on the scale just to see where we were. And he'd be 170 pounds the next day.
145 to 170.
Wow.
And it's like, man, like that's not healthy.
No,
and it's not, I mean, it's dangerous for the other guy too, who maybe is going from 145 to 155.
Right.
And now he's got a 170.
Right.
We're talking about 23 to 24 pounds gained in, you know, more than 24 hours because the weigh-ins typically are in the afternoon. And then the fight, you know, the fights usually start at 7, depending on where you are on the card. But so you have more than 24 hours, but still, that's a lot. And I mean, they have athletes die from weight cuts. So, I mean, I think if you just said, look, we're going to weigh you at the fights the night of the fight, and you know, you give up a lot when you cut, and so if you're cutting right before the fight, there's going to be a problem with that. So most guys would come in at a comfortable walking weight.
Right.
You know, so
I think a big reason why Stella was able to say what she said to me, you know, I'm just more comfortable. I've never been more comfortable in my skin. Like I know that my value doesn't come from that, is that that's really the attitude of her current team right now. And they're, you know, her current coach is like, yeah, 63 is big, but you're also really strong and you're fast and you're good. And it's not about winning right now. It's just about getting experience. So some resetting of priorities, that it's not all about this or nothing. And on one hand, yeah, that's her current coach and her current team. But on the other hand, that's also where she is currently in her quote unquote career. Whereas before it was a lot of, you know, just making it to the next, to the next, to the next, trying to get on the radar for everyone else. So it's, I think it's tough for female athletes, period. I think it's tough for weight-based female athletes, for combat weight-based female athletes. And man, I just wish there was more information out there for people. So, Rob, could you write a book about that, please?
I will pass on that one pretty hard. It's just so dodgy. Like it's funny. It's gotten to a point where dealing with people who are diabetic or autoimmune and they're gonna die, and it's like, do you want to pull back from the edge? And they're like, yes. And it's like, that's fucking easy. But like this brushing the edge of elite athletic performance. It some days I feel like the main thing that I do is act as a speed bump, because the people motivated enough to do that, mainly I'm just like keeping them from killing themselves from overtraining and undereating and all the rest of it. So it like the reward there, but it's also like you get some of these razor's edge where it's kind of like, okay, the weight cuts, like, is this guy going to be hypovolemic and like pass out and, get a head trauma in a sauna or something,
Yeah, there was a gal, wasn't it fights 2 weeks ago? She passed out on the scale.
Oh, that's pretty common.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, you're going to pass out and hit your head at weigh-ins. And now, do we really feel comfortable with you getting into the cage? Absolutely not.
Yeah. So my wheelhouse is just like chubby people that we're pulling back from the brink. And it's like, man, I like that all day long. So,
I like that. That's your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Probably start steering this back towards
their
experiences and their children.
Are you trying to tell me that I'm talking about my kids too much? Because I do that a lot.
No, I'm just telling you that you always want to try to keep your podcasts to a short time frame.
I think it might actually be time for the 3 questions.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Fire away.
We have 3 questions for you.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, goodness.
And I never know. Should we give them all 3 questions up front?
We won't remember them.
Okay.
Well, one at a time.
We do have
We're too old.
Head, yeah.
Our brains are deteriorating.
I love that.
I like it better. I mean, you can kind of give the first 2 together because it's like reassuring that, okay, you're going to tell us
Should we just
something.
talk about it and get them really amped up about what these questions are going to be?
Yeah, super nervous.
I know, super nervous. Okay. So, high point in parenting, low point in parenting. And by high point, like I love the way Travis describes this. You go to bed at night and you're like, I fucking killed it today. Like,
I don't say it like that. I say it, I killed it today.
I say it, I fucking killed it. I am the best. I should actually write books about parenting because I'm so good at this.
And I should probably get a medal too.
A medal. People are going to be banging my door down. That's your high point. Low point.
Man, I really screwed the pooch on that one.
Mm-hmm. I blew it.
CPS should come take my kids from me right now.
Seriously.
In fact, I'll drop them off there. Yeah.
I think I might have just created a serial killer.
I failed big and hard. I failed. And look, here's the other rule. You have your answers and you have your answers.
Oh, this is a hard rule.
Fail. We were actually on her, what did we call it? The babycation, or the when Sagan was still in utero, and we went to Lake Tahoe. And we stayed at that.
I forgot all
condo.
about that.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I had tried to avoid the spanking deal. Like for the most part, it's like I definitely I don't give the kids any rope. Like they know that if they fuck with me at all, like there's going to be absolute consequences, and I will throw her under the bus a little bit. She'll kind of shrug it off and everything, and they will start like tying her in knots. And with me, it's kind of like this is what's going to happen. But so it was only about like 2.5. Yeah, she was 2.5 because Sagan wasn't born yet. Yeah, so she was right at 2.5. Dude, and she was just like losing her shit, like just absolutely out of her mind. And I gave her a pretty good swat on the ass, 2 or 3 of them. And then it was like this complete system reset. And she was like, I get it. Like, okay, there's consequences here. Aye, Captain, I'm on board. And I went outside, and she said to me, she's like, God, what did she? I'm forgetting, but she said,
so long ago.
Dad, I'm sorry I failed you. And she's like 2.5 or something, but it was like that. Like, I'm so sorry I failed you. I will do better. And I went outside and sat down and face in hand and started crying. And I was like, I'm a fucking horrible monster.
So it wasn't the spanking that made you horrible, but it was her response to the spanking.
It was both of them. It was
Gotcha.
like she's so about-faced and then, like internalized it and everything. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a monster, And that was pretty low. Like I was like... but I've swatted both kids on the butt a couple of times, and mainly like our kids, and this is a bit of a diversion, but like we had friends that you never knew if their kids were going to dart into the street and stuff like that. That was never an issue with our kids. Now we always watch them; they can be knuckleheads and everything, but it was never that like, oh, I wonder if mom and dad are looking, and then they go, oh, Jimmy, 3, 2, it's like none of that bullshit. It's like they just knew that there were going to be consequences there. But high point. Do you have anything on mind? I'll noodle here.
I'm trying to think of my low point. My off microphone. Sorry. I mean, what's coming to mind for me is not like a parenting fail. It's just sort of like how I felt as a new mom, unable to latch my first baby. Like, and I know that's different than the question you asked, but like,
no, that's legit.
It like, I remember trying, we had home births, and so we didn't have any nurses to like help you afterwards. So the midwife leaves after like 3 hours, and then you've got this baby and your husband.
Yeah,
and
no fucking
I
idea.
had no friends, and my mom had passed away, so I had no like other female experienced person around. And we're like trying to do all this stuff, and I remember trying to latch her, and she'd like arch her back and like push me away, and I'm like, I have nowhere. Like, you just feel like such a fucking failure,
right?
You can't
I'm
get your
clearly
baby
not cut out for this mothering thing.
Yeah, that was hard, and I know that's different than like
that's
parenting
legit.
fail,
Yeah,
but
that's
like
legit.
You didn't fail the fail question. That was a good one.
Yeah, and so I ended up pumping for 9 months with her.
Did she eventually latch? No,
and it sucks because we had a lactation consultant who was like telling me like, if it hurts, it means the latch is not properly on, and so you have to like unlatch and then relatch. And I took that information like to heart, like, because it fucking hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think I was like unlatching her, trying to get this perfect latch, and it was frustrating her. And so like we never had that good latch. And so when Sagan was born, I was like determined. And so I went through like the 2 weeks of hell.
Well, and also your sister was there.
Yeah.
And your sister was like, that's bullshit. Suck it up, and it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
for 2 weeks, it fucking sucks, and then it's fine. So, yeah. High points.
Trying to think. I mean, there are definitely high. I mean, they're good kids. Like as they get up,
we get little notes. Like I guess high points are like letters or little notes, like, dear mom, like, and sometimes they're like, sometimes they're not nice ones. Sometimes they're like, I don't like it when you raise your voice, like sometimes they'll like tell you that way, but they like Sagan in particular is like a little note writer. And I remember one, I woke up one morning and pinned to the coffee pot was this, and I love elephants. So she had drawn this elephant with like the trunk like spraying water on its back. And they call me Mim, dear Mim, don't forget to make me some chocolate salt, because she knew we were going to record a podcast in the morning, and we had talked about it the night before, so she wanted me to set it out for her, and she spelled chocolate CHOKLET, and just like all the misspelling, like the cute little misspelling. So like I think high point for me is just like little notes and drawings from kids.
I love that.
I'll go with that. I have nothing I can improve on with that. Yeah.
Okay, so
was that one question or two? That was two.
That was two questions.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The last question is the gold nugget question. So if there was one piece of advice that you could give current parent, future parent, something that you guys wish you had learned maybe earlier, or something you stumbled upon, or maybe it was something that was passed on to you that made a difference in parenting advice.
Abandon all hope.
That was so quick.
Man. If I could flip that around a little bit, I really wish that I knew precisely how to navigate this social media world that we're living in. Like that is something that I make my living with the internet. Like if I could shut that off and literally burn my phone, and like you would need to get a private investigator to find me, I would do it, but I can't. Like I can't do that. And so our kids see us working on the computer, and we give them a little bit of access to the computer, and we've tried to shift, instead of doing some work on the phone, as minimal phone as we can. Like we try to plug it in, leave it on the counter. But there's video games, and their friends play video games and everything. And I would do almost anything to know how to navigate this. Just in our community today, some folks shared the struggles that they're having with their teenagers related to like the some of it's cancel culture, some of it's just kind of finding themselves with it, but they're teenagers,
like
kind of identity stuff.
Well, that can still kind of be your gold nugget too. I mean, that could still be your advice as well. I mean, you're looking for the answer, but I mean, that's still a piece of advice for current and future parents.
That seems to be
this is
such
like
a
our
big deal.
current. I
Such
mean,
a
even
big
before we
deal.
came here, like they were hoping that they could be on their playing a game while we were doing this podcast. And each day, I mean, we homeschool, so it's like if we do all of our stuff, can we earn it today? And it's this like conundrum, because I want to say yes, you did a good job and you checked all the boxes, so here you have this, but I know what I'm giving them is not good.
Right.
And so we actually had a huge conversation before we even came down here about we've watched the movie The Social Dilemma, and we're gonna watch it with them, because we're like have you guys seen it?
We still haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
No, the last time we flipped through it, you were like, I want to see that, but not tonight.
Yeah.
And I don't blame you.
It's not like a right before bed thing. Like I wouldn't watch it like at night.
Well, you'll
before
be so
bed.
glad that your kids are largely launched, and probably appear to have like avoided the worst parts of that. Like it's gnarly. It's super gnarly.
Yeah. So that's one that we're struggling with. I guess the thing that popped into my head when you asked is, and I don't remember which book I read this in. I feel like it was a book and not somebody telling me this, but whether you're frustrated with your child or you're telling them something good, like, and they're little people, so like get down on their level. And so I find, and I feel like it really works. Like if I'm like need to have a serious conversation with one of them, I'll get on my knees like with Sagan, and then I'm like eye level with her, and I put my hand on her back, and like we're here versus like me,
Talking
authority
down to
figure,
her.
tall down to this little person. Yeah. So like, sit down with them, kneel, like touch, touch helps. And just be like, okay, I'm sorry, or what? Why are you feeling that way? Or just, I think it really helps with that connection, and I think it comes across for them.
That's good
advice. Very good.
And I think parents should pay attention to the phones and social media. And I mean, we see it in the gym all the time.
It would be amazing if putting your kid on a phone or an iPad was as good as them doing jujitsu or eating steak or getting a tan while stand-up paddleboarding, but it's just not.
And that's exactly what you told her. Because Zoe was kind of frustrated. Like she was thinking that they would get to be on playing a game while we were doing this, and we're like, you can bring your sketchbook and your color pencils and your horses and you can bring all this stuff and play, but that's not as tantalizing as like a screen.
And it's so appealing for us because we work from home,
right,
and we have a good gig. We're very fortunate, but man, like homeschooling and then doing the work from home.
The four of us
all
spend
that.
a lot of time together.
Yeah.
And like if you give them these things, they're gone. It's like a ninja smoke bomb, just poof, they're gone.
Yeah.
And that is so alluring when you are busy and you just have shit you need to do.
100%.
And I'm like, okay, if I don't do that, then it's literally every 10 minutes. Hey mom, hey dad, hey mom, hey dad. And it's like, you need to be self-directed. Okay. And 8 minutes later, they're not. And so I get how alluring that is, but I also just like we see it in their behavior. Like they really, they're kids, but they generally get along really, really well. And it's just clockwork. If we give them these things, and all that they're doing are playing
horse games.
Horse games where they're like jumping horses and doing stuff like that. And they're absolute little shitbags afterwards. Like just
isn't that
pieces
interesting?
of shit
And
immediately.
I would like for somebody to do some research on why that's the case.
Well, I think I know.
You do?
I think I do. I have not seen The Social Dilemma, but I have a degree in biology, and I know how food works, and I know how video games work, and I know how Instagram works, and I know how Facebook works. And people smarter than me understand how the human brain works. And all they do is they develop those games with a reward system that basically fires endorphins in those little brains, just like Instagram likes and comments on your Facebook post do. And it's a addiction, really. I mean, it's
and then you set it down and you drop out of that baseline,
correct.
And you feel like shit.
Yeah.
It's why when you look over at people in meetings, they're scrolling their Instagram. They can't not do it. They're addicted.
We pulled all social media off of our phone 6 months ago. And so we just do what we have to on desktop. And even the bulk of like my Instagram stuff, I have an assistant now that I'll provide content. She posts it. I don't look at the comments. And I was like, this may be career suicide, but I'm like,
have to
sell my body on the street at some point, but it was just so, it was weird. The first week of pulling all social media off of my phone, I felt like I was on vacation, and I still had a full workload, but I was like, I have so much free time.
Well, because you don't realize it, but you spend every other second, like you're in the bathroom, you're wherever you are, and you're just like wasting away, versus like having a thought about something.
Right.
Like,
we play
solitude.
We play a lot of cards, and I just make a rule at the table. I'm like, no phones at the table, because inevitably you're playing cards with your kids or even the adults, and it's like if you're dealing or shuffling, it's like they're every down second they're back on their phone.
The only, I guess the only allowance is when you play cards with Nana. If her phone rings, she gets to answer it if she wants to.
It rang 3 times while she was on the podcast. She finally picked it up while on the podcast.
And
That's
had a
awesome.
conversation.
That is
So
awesome.
awesome.
It was the best. She gets to do that.
She's 88.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to do
She
whatever
gets
you
to do
want.
that.
You
Yeah.
really do. Well,
Yeah.
thank you guys so much.
This was
And
fun.
I think we probably should do another one at some point.
For sure.
Because I'm especially, first of all, I can't wait to get to know those 2 girls. And I suspect as time goes on, you're going to have a lot more information to pass on to everyone else. So thank you for being here.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today. If you want more information about the Growing Gorillas Martial Arts Program for kids, please visit growinggorillas.com.
And if you're interested in finding an SBG near you in the state of Montana, please visit us at sbgmontana.com.
See you soon.
Stay cold, Pony Boy.
Peace out, Girl Scout.
Catch you on the flip-flop.
Catch you on the flipper dipper.
After a while, crocodile.
I don't know anymore.
See you later, alligator.
Bye.